Flail. Today we're going to talk about the medieval weapon called the flail. This weapon consisted of a striking head attached to a handle by a chain or strong rope. These were used during medieval times, a lot of time in battle, in combat, close combat, to pierce the armor of the other person you're fighting in battle with, your opponent. Both knights on horseback and foot soldiers would use these in battle. These weapons for the knights were much smaller than this, usually just to make it a little bit easier while they were on horseback. They were also lighter than this as well, which made it easier to use and to kind of build up that momentum while they were on the horse and then strike their opponent. These would have the ability to really have a heavy blow to their armor or their chainmail they were wearing, and could harm them in one blow.
So now I'm going to talk about what peasants usually carried. So this isn't obviously a typical weapon during the medieval time. I didn't carry a sword or anything like that. So this, I'm going to be talking about the basket, right here. So baskets are basically what the peasants carried around. They usually had bread inside. They were used for harvesting, storage, and transporting certain items. They had to make the baskets themselves. So normally we just go to the store and buy them. They had to actually make them. And they were made out of wood, split into narrow ribbons, as well as vines or willow shoots. Before weaving the materials together to finish the basket, they actually had to soak them, usually for a full day, to make them pliable. That way they could weave them in and out and bend the wood, and that way you can get the whole weaving look. And that's basically what a peasant carried around in the days instead of a regular weapon.
Hi, my name is Miss Cindy, and I'm going to talk to you today about one of the weapons that they used back in the medieval times, and that weapon would be the sword. There were several sword classifications. There was the short sword, the arming sword, the long sword, and the great sword. The sword was the primary weapon of the knight, and when the fighting moved to closer quarters, it was the sword that saved the knight's life. A knight and his weapon, his sword, were inseparable. Now this is an example of an arming sword. And this is the classic one-handed sword that was used by knights and was the most used sword. It was a straight, double-edged weapon with a single-handed hilt. The hilt is the part from here to here, and a blade length of about 28 to 31 inches. The arming sword was overall a light, versatile sword used for cutting, and thrusting. It normally boasted excellent balance. The arming swords were worn for both a symbol of the knight's rank and for defense. Arming swords were often handed down from generation to generation, and it was quite possible that an entire family tree would use the same sword. Thank you for watching.
Hello, Miss Tracy here. I'm going to talk with you about the crossbow. As you know, the longbow was used by Robin Hood and by many, many warriors during the Middle Ages. But the crossbow was invented in China, and it was actually brought over to Europe and became very popular during the battles of the Crusades. And there was a couple reasons for that. Whenever firing a longbow, you just would hold your bow and your other hand would hold the string back. This was invented for more stability when firing and better accuracy. Because you're holding on to this part here, then the mechanism would fire for you. Now, what I have here is a pistol crossbow, is what it's called. Your traditional crossbows were much larger, probably about this long. With your crossbow, you would have smaller sized arrows. These are actually called prods on a crossbow. They're not called arrows, though they look like an arrow. And what someone would do is you would put your prod in, and each crossbow style is a little different. I'm sure they were very different back in medieval times. There'd be a mechanism on the back you would pull back. As you pull that mechanism back, it pulls the strings back, which loads your prod into place. And then by pulling on the trigger, like a traditional gun, up in here would release the string and send the prod out, impaling the enemy. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate firing this on an online video for safety purposes, but you get the idea of how it did work. Now, one really important part about the crossbow is it really helped people, warriors in battle, to have a weapon to fire while riding horseback. While they were riding their horse, they couldn't easily hold their bow, use the other hand to pull the string, and hold on and guide their horse at the same time. There were some advances in technology, believe it or not, in medieval times, to make it to where the crossbow could be handled, meaning loaded and fired, all just using one hand. So that way they could continue to ride their horse through battle, firing at the enemy and winning the war. Though the crossbow made it easier to fire and have good accuracy during times of war, there was still the problem of having to use both hands to cock and load and fire the prod, because you would have to put this in and then hold it and use the other hand to pull it back. Well, that could not easily be done while riding horseback. You had to be holding on to your horse too. So they invented two different devices during the medieval times: the ratchet drawing mechanism and the push lever, which pictures will be showing up on the screen, showing you what these devices look like. And I'll demonstrate for you how those worked. Not so easily done with the pistol crossbow. They mainly use these with your longer crossbows. But to give you the idea, they would hold their crossbow under their arm while they were riding their horse through battle. They would grab a prod, stick it in, with their ratchet or their push lever on, cock it back, reach back, and boom, they would fire at the enemy. So that just shows you that they really had some creative ideas and some really awesome ways of advancing their weapons during the medieval times. Thank you for watching and have a great day.
Hello, Emily here. I want to welcome you to another week of our summer reading online as we talk to you a little bit today about different types of attire that were worn back in medieval times. Chainmail was a type of metal armor that was worn by those going into battle. It was used to protect them from axe blades and sword blades. And chainmail was basically made out of metal rings. So the blacksmith would take big sheets of iron or brass or steel, and he would stamp out lots and lots of tiny metal rings. And then once they were stamped out, they would link them together, kind of like a knitting pattern almost, and it makes a very flexible type of protective armor. Now this was ideal because, like I said, it was very flexible, so they can move in it. It was also very easy to make, very easy to repair, and you can make it easily for any size person. There are different types of chainmail that knights or whoever was going into battle would wear. There were socks, there were gloves, they would reinforce their gloves with the chainmail, entire shirts, headpieces, and collars to help protect the chest. The collars would actually hang from their helmets. Eventually chainmail was replaced by metal armor, but they still would wear chainmail underneath to help protect different places that the armor couldn't reach, like joints, for instance. And just to get an idea of how much this would weigh and how many rings they would use, this piece that I made here, which is not very big, wraps around my wrist almost. I used about 350 rings to make this, whereas full shirts that the knights would wear would have up to 45,000 rings, and they would weigh close to 55 pounds.
Hi, this is Amber Grant from the Louisville Public Library. Today we're going to talk about medieval crowns and cloaks. The medieval crown, like I'm wearing today, you would originally recognize as originated in England. It was an ornamental helmet, a symbol of status for royalty. As time passed, embellishments were added to the crown, including arches and precious jewels. Crowns sometimes made of flowers and precious stones, like the one I have on today. Today, crowned monarchs have become rare. The medieval crown that once commanded supreme authority still evoke awe and wonder today in the museum and cathedrals where they are kept on display. In medieval times, cloaks were a popular garment for traveling and wearing outdoors, particularly in cold climates. The cloak was most commonly worn by women was called a mantle, which was a cloak without a hood. The hood was usually worn as a separate item of clothing. Often cloaks that were worn by royalty were thickly lined and had fur around the collar because they could afford that luxury. However, they did also wear thin ones like the one I have on today. Over time, accessories were added such as fastenings in the front in place of the tie like I have on this one. Royalty often had large jeweled brooches in the middle fastened, to fasten them together. It's important to note that cloaks were often not only worn by to protect the wearer from the weather, but also as a fashion accessory.
Alright, so today we're going to be talking about the medieval times and how the peasants, what they wore. So the peasants' clothing was usually made of rough wool or linen spun and woven by the women. Men had to typically wear tunics with long leggings underneath, and that had to keep them warm during the winter. Women wore long dresses, they usually made those dresses. And it was not uncommon for peasants to wear no shoes during the summer months, so there's no shoes. During the cooler weather, they did wear simple leather shoes. That's basically all they had. And then the colors peasants usually wore the most were red, which is what I'm wearing, brown or gray. During the winter months, peasants had to make use of simple cloaks. So that is what I'm wearing, just a simple cloak. They were usually made out of wool, satin, silk, or velvet. But for the peasants, they mostly wore cloaks made out of wool. That was like the easiest and cheapest way they could go about it. They also wore belts, if you can see it. They're usually braided looking belts. They're also called girdles. They are made out of either rope, fabric, or leather. Occasionally belts also had buckles in them, but mostly for the poor they had to tie them, like I did. And that is basically the summary of what a peasant wore back in the medieval days.
Hi, my name is Miss Cindy, and I'm going to give you a little bit of information on the medieval warriors' dress that they wore back then. Now, what I have on represents this hood here. This is let's see if I can get it back on. There you go. This represents the fox chainmail style hood that they wore back then. And then, as you can see, there's attached foil pattern cape, and on the front here is what they call a crest, and it's a rampant lion crest, the one that I'm wearing. Now, rampant refers to a beast or a monster standing on one hind leg. As you can see, it is right here. The crest refers to the small image that lies on the top of a helmet, such as a rampant lion crest. And you can see it right here. This is the lion on top of the helmet. The crest can usually be found on a person's shield and cape. Now in this case, I have it on the front, and as you can see, there's one also on the shield. The crest is a component of the coat of arms, which can be used as a simplified symbol when the full coat of arms is too detailed. Now also I have here, there's some other crests and some other shields. As you can see, these are different ones that you may have seen way back then. The coat of arms is basically the bigger picture of an individual. It's unique to an individual as it represents the achievements of that person. The coat of arms denotes family descent, adoption, alliance, property ownership, and eventually their profession, what they did. The coat of arms dates to the early medieval Europe. And also I just wanted to add the family crest usually was passed down from generation to generation. So, like for example, the rampant lion here would have been passed on down from father to son and so forth, on down through generations. Thank you, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.
Hi, Miss Tracy here from the Louisville Public Library. Thank you for watching our video about medieval attire and weapons. The attire I'm going to talk about today is traditional peasant attire for women, except to explain to you that women did not always wear dresses. There were many occasions that women wore pants in medieval times. Women would even wear armor, and yes, women even participated in battle. They were not just always in a dress and being quiet, peaceful women. Some women did get out there and become warriors. One of the most famous women who participated in battle, I know you've heard of, was Joan of Arc. She did wear pants, she did wear armor. Not only did she participate in battle, she also led entire armies. This all took place during the early 1400s. Now, as you see in my attire, I have on a standard peasant shirt, maybe not with most of the decorative parts, but they did wear just a very pale color. Most people did wear belts back then. Standard leather belt was traditional. As you see, my belt's plain because I'm a peasant. Your higher elite society people had more decorations and jewels on their belts. And for a woman who participated in battle or maybe just did some non-traditional womanly task on a daily basis, maybe farming or something, I have on pants and some good boots, because you never know what a woman in the medieval times might get into. The key part of my outfit I'd like to focus on and explain to you are the arm bracers. These were most commonly used by archers to protect their arms from whiplash when they would fire an arrow. As you see, it's mostly made of leather. There are strings to help hold it on. And your archers traditionally didn't have any decorative metal on them, but most of your other people who wore these, like maybe blacksmiths, even farmers wore them, and of course your warriors in battle. Some of the extra decorative metal would help with preventing a blow of a sword to the arm. That was the key reason for these, was to protect the arms from injuries. Now, as you see, my sleeves are tucked inside. They were also used for helping to hold the sleeves up. You ever been performing a task and you have to keep pushing your sleeves up? Well, the arm bracers helped with that problem during the medieval times. Now, there was a book wrote in 1545 by Roger Ascham. The book was called Toxophilite. I'm hoping I got that pronunciation correct. And it was the first book written about archery in the English language. book was all about archery, about his love of archery. And there was a particular quote in this book that caught my attention because it talks specifically about the arm bracer and tells you just how important this piece of attire was during that time. That quote is, "In an arm bracer, a man must take heed of three things. That it have no nails in it, nor buckles, that it be fastened without agulets, for these will shear and sunder a man's string before he be aware and put his bow in jeopardy." So, that quote tells you that most of the time the archers did not have anything decorative. They wore them plain because they did not want to damage their bow, because their bow was their most precious item during battle. I hope you enjoyed my presentation here, and I made these myself. Try making yourself some arm bracers. I think they're really cool. Have a great day.